Welcome everyone on the panel and those joining us from around the globe for Global Student Chat. Today, we yet again join for another tweet and talk on the topic the importance of mental health and well-being. First of all, let me give you an overview of the Global Student Chat. It is a student-led chat that connects K-12 students worldwide to discuss topics and questions about character education, social justice, and citizenship. Global Student Chat creates opportunities for students to network with others, gain perspective, build relationships with new learning partners in literacy-rich learning environment, experience social media as a powerful platform for learning, and establish a positive digital footprint. Thank you for joining us today. Well, I hand it over to Samantha to take us through the tech talk for the day.
Sure, thank you. So if you're watching us on YouTube, you may sign in with a Google account and use the chat to comment or ask a question. If you have X, formerly Twitter, follow the hashtag Global Student Chat, and hashtag Media Lit Week to read the ideas, thoughts, and questions shared by others. We will be using the question one or answer one format. You can also participate on our Instagram account by responding to the posts. Use hashtag Global Student Chat to add your thinking and get involved in the conversation. Feel free to share your first name and where in the world you're joining from today. If you ask questions, we will bring them to the panel. Please remember that the audience for this chat is K-12, so your comments and questions should be appropriate for all ages.
Well, let's have a short round of introduction. I'm Namya Joshi, and I'm a grade 12 student studying at Satpal Middle School in India. And this is my third year at the Global Student Chat. Really excited for today's tweet and talk.
I can go next. I'm Samantha. I'm from Aurora, and this is my first year in Global Student Chat, and I look forward to the chat today.
Hi, I'm Yuhan. I am a student at the Credence High School in Dubai. Looking forward to our tweet and talk today.
Hi, everyone. My name is Eric Cusin. I'm the founder of an organization called #SameHereGlobal. It's a mental health charity organization. I was a 15-year professional sports executive, didn't think mental health applied to me. And unfortunately, it came in and reared its ugly head and took me down in a way that I had to navigate a care system that unfortunately did not suit me well. And I learned healing modalities that helped me to climb out of a very difficult time. And in doing so, decided that I want to be part of the solution and bring together a alliance of people to discuss this topic in a way that I think is more inclusive, brings people together, and brings people solutions. So appreciate what you all are doing with this program, and thank you for having me.
So now I'll just be starting off with some norms. So we will have 30 minutes to discuss 3 questions. Please be mindful that this chat is open to students in K-12. Active participation from all classes is how we learn. All comments made during the chat should be positive and productive. We will welcome diverse opinions, and you may not agree with someone and what they've said, but we ask that when challenging an idea that you respectfully disagree with the idea, not the individual person. And being respectful online includes using language that is inclusive and culturally appropriate.
Thank you, Samantha. Well, let's begin with today's questions. The first question is, what are some common misconceptions about mental health and how can we challenge them? Well, I think in earlier times, during my grandmother's era, mental health issues were surrounded by significant stigma and were often considered as taboos. People were skeptical to talk about it, and depressed individuals were not considered as they were considered as not normal, and these topics didn't exist in everyday conversations. That led to a culture of silence and mostly misunderstanding. But I'm really grateful that these topics are touched upon now, and we all are together discussing them openly in today's chat. Well, first of all, I don't think they're rare at all. It's not a sign of weakness either, because it can hit anybody. Because of the kind of lifestyle we have, it's very common for anybody to have a mental health issue. And I believe people with such issues aren't usually violent. They're more oftentimes victims of any problem that they're facing. And these problems, I believe, aren't permanent because they can be recovered or managed fine with treatment. And most importantly, I think therapy and self-help works wonders, using CBT, meds. And if you're just going to give a little bit tweak to your lifestyle, it can work wonders. But when it comes to, I think, teenagers and children, they do have mental health issues as well. So early help, I believe, is the key. And no, I don't think you can just not snap out of it. Proper guidance, support, and time from our elders is a must. And for all of this, I believe awareness is the key, because we need to spread accurate information, be it through educational programs or workshops, and even social media, as it is the most popular way to spread our information. So we can normalize the entire conversation. And the best way is when people share their personal stories, because I think real experiences make the topics very relatable.
Yeah, those are some great points. I didn't think about it like that. But for me, I think in high school, a common misconception about mental health is that you can always see when someone is struggling. I've come to learn that this is false throughout my high school experience. And this assumption sort of overlooks the reality that many people with mental health issues may conceal their struggles. And I think this could be from, I don't know, like fear of judgment or being alienated from friends or family and things like that. I think this misconception can lead to individuals not receiving the support they need, as their suffering may go unnoticed or dismissed by others. And I think to challenge this misconception, society must understand that mental health can affect anyone, regardless of outward appearance or behavior. As well, by being empathetic and understanding, we can encourage a more sort of compassionate approach to mental health, where individuals feel safe to disclose their struggles.
Yeah, I think you guys both touched on some really good points. I mean, just to add to what Namia was saying earlier about mental health issues being rare, I also was I was a little curious about that, so I searched it up as well, did some research on it, and I saw that nearly 1 in 5 adults live with mental illness in a given year, and I thought that was a really pressing matter. People really think that mental health is more of a rare thing, 1 in every 20 people, 1 in every 30 people, but 1 in every 5 people is a very high percentage. And furthermore, another misconception is that people can snap out of mental health issues just like that. If they try hard enough, they focus enough. It's not as simple as that for some people. Many people think that mental health issues are easy to overcome, when in reality, mental health illness can be complex conditions that require appropriate medical attention, therapists, medications, etc. So it's not as easy to snap out of it or move past your mental health issues as some may think.
I absolutely agree with all of you, and I think the main misconception about seeking therapy is that you're incapable, that you're modeled as someone who's weak and incapable of handling your own problems. And I think for this reason, we should normalize therapy and challenge stigma, because therapy should not be just a tool for treating severe mental illness, but also for personal growth and self-care. Then uh, we must spread awareness and highlight the benefits amongst people, the masses. And of course, we must be supportive towards someone who we know is facing a problem, because we should always be compassionate towards someone, because as several of you just said, you can never really identify if a person is having a mental issue. So yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, I'll take what three said. I'll wrap it up in a bow and then add some pieces onto it that I hope are helpful. I agree with much of what was shared here. I know, Samantha, when you were reading the rules, and it's my first time being on with you, said there could be agreement, there could be disagreement. I call it, when it's a disagreement, I call it a yes and, okay, as opposed to a but, right? So how do we build onto something? So you all had shared a lot of the statistics and the normalization conversations that are happening in this space. And, Nama, you brought up the term stigma, and Kabir, you brought up that 1 in 5 people is a lot higher than 1 in 20, right? And Yuan, you brought up therapy, right? And the normalization of therapy. That understanding is a great baseline understanding. And we do a lot of work in schools where we work with students of your age, go all the way down to pre-K up to 12th graders, and then everyone in colleges and corporate offices. And the challenge is with the general terminology that we're using, the understanding is still something that's called binary. Some people have it and some people don't. Okay. So Kabir, I'm going to use your statistic as an example. I'm going to challenge you in a fun way. If 1 in 5 people have mental illness, what are we saying about the other 4 in 5 people? What are they?
I don't want to use the wrong terminology, but like,
right? But that's the point, right? I'm probably putting you in a difficult spot, and not meant to do that to make you uncomfortable. But when we look at it in that binary way, whether the number is 1 in 5, 2 in 5, 3 in 5, even 4, oh my God, 4 in 5 people, that's 80% of people. The challenge is, what are we telling the other group? Okay. So the statistics, and when you talk about stigma, Namia, at the beginning, the concept of stigma, we have to figure out, where did that concept come from? And my take on studying it, because I didn't think the topic applied to me. So, Kabir, I was in the group of the 4 and 5s for most of my life. Mental health doesn't apply to me. I don't have it because genetically I'm not depressed or anxious or have PTSD or OCD. That doesn't apply to me. And then all of a sudden, when my brain started to fail me, what felt like out of nowhere, where did that come from? How did that happen? Do I have this genetic disorder that just popped up, right? And so the reality of mental health is, we call it cousins living in the same house. Trauma, addiction, overdose, suicide, all these terms that seem like they're these different things. The underlying piece that contributes to all of them is the emotional pain that we feel from challenging life events that every one of us experiences. Divorces and job losses and breakups and verbal abuses and sexual abuses and bullying and cyberbullying and sickness of loved ones and loss of loved ones. And when you look at it that way, let's go back to the number now, right, Kabir? Do 1 in 5 people experience those things, or do 5 in 5 people experience those things, right? 5 in 5 do. But the problem is, by some subjective measure, now I'm going to give some of the history on what's called, I don't know if most folks are familiar with this term. It's a little kind of, in the education space, it gets talked about a lot, but it's called the DSM-5, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. That's how they come up with the labels of the diagnoses that we have. You're depressed, you're anxious, you have PTSD. Well, that DSM-5 was created by psychiatrists. Psychiatrists had opinions. They didn't have tests that are definitive that you have it or you don't. When you take a test to see if you have a certain number of cancerous cells, you either have that certain number of cells or you don't. When you take a test for diabetes, your blood sugar is either at a certain level or it's not. When you sit across from a psychologist or a psychiatrist, bless you, Samantha, and you're explaining what you're feeling, they're subjectively saying, well, of this list of 20 symptoms that we think contribute to depression, you have 5 or more of them, and you've had them for 2 weeks or more, so you must have this thing called depression. And I would say that model doesn't serve us well, because even if this thing called depression exists, let's call it a cluster of symptoms as opposed to a disease. And I can tell you, for someone who laid in bed for 2.5 years, dysfunctional, unable to think, unable to operate, that mental health is real. I'm not denying how bad mental health can get. But what I'm saying is, when we talk about it through the lens of some have disorder and some don't, what happens is we leave ourselves to where that other 80% of the population sits back and goes, that's really nice that these students and this nice man are having a conversation about it. And okay, for the people who struggle with it, it's good information for them, but that's not me. And so how do we get proactive so that we can talk about what our life experiences are? And now Namia, who lives in India, and Yuhan, who lives in the UAE, and you guys live where, Samantha, again? In Aurora, you said?
In Canada, yeah, Ontario.
Canada, okay. You're able to communicate in a collective. Everything connects you because life experiences are part of the human condition. Now, when you talk about the human condition, divorce, I don't wish this on you, Namia, but divorce in your family can be related, Samantha, to divorce in your family. Maybe it's not in your family, maybe it's in your friends group. But the whole reason behind the name Same Here is because, back to Kabir, it's not 1 in 5 mental illness. It's you and I, we're the same, all 5 of us, because we all face challenging life events that contribute to the buildup of what impacts our mental health. Is that helpful?
Yeah, I just have a quick follow-up question
Yeah.
based on what you were saying. So do you think that putting a title on a mental condition is beneficial, or, if it's a disadvantage to put a title on it?
I could go down a whole rabbit hole with this, and Mike, who's on the back end, knows this. I understand the need for labels for the purposes of insurance and coverage, and there is a validation that people feel when they've been feeling awful to know, oh, my friend Kabir has felt this too, so I'm not alone. Okay. The downside of the labeling Kabir is, oh, Kabir has depression, I have anxiety. No, two different sides. He doesn't get what I have. I don't get what he has. And then take the 4 and 5 versus the 1 and 5. The depression, anxiety, PTSD group get put in this bucket, and the thing that you struggle with, what are the other 4 and 5s, get put in this bucket of they're kind of okay, fine, healthy, normal, all right, I'm not sure, right? So in a marketing perspective of how we laymen talk about mental health, I don't think labels are helpful. I don't want to hurt the medical industry that getting the diagnoses and getting the medications that are needed and the therapies that are needed. That's where I think the labeling can help. But we put the cart before the horse in this space. The stigma that Namia talks about comes about because people don't go, like, we don't look at physical health and go, do you have this thing called obesity or heart disease or not? Like, think about if we thought about physical health and mental health in that same way. It'd be ridiculous. We go, hey, have you been eating the wrong foods? Has plaque been building up in your arteries? Hey, maybe you've been sitting around a little too much, and getting to the gym would get the blood sugar down a little bit, right? And it leads towards those things, right? Imagine a scale that only read proper weight or obese, one or the other, right? That's essentially the tools that we're giving in mental health, is telling people you have it or you don't. So I hope that it's a complex answer to your question, Kabir, but I understand the usefulness of it. If I had a magic wand and I said the insurance companies cover anything and they believe what we have, I do away with labels completely and go, trauma underlies all of it. It's our life experiences. Trust people in how they feel and get people the help they need based on what they're sharing.
Yeah, and I agree with you, especially on the point that although it's important for insurance companies, I don't like the aspect that having a label, you can compare them. You can say my depression is more important than your anxiety, or PTSD is more important than anxiety. You can kind of rank them. So I think in that sense, it makes sense to not want the labels.
It's and I know we're getting the prompt to move on to Q2, but which one of you brought up social media? That's important to talk on social media. Was that Namia or was that Samantha?
I guess it was both of us.
Okay. So here's the only challenge with, I want it to be talked about on social media. I have social media accounts. My rallying cry to everyone who talks about it on social media is, don't take the label as your identity. You don't want to say, I'm ADHD Adam, and these are all the things that ADHD people go through, because the algorithm will reward that. I'm going to be for people who like getting social media followings, there's 2 ways to get a social media following in the mental health space. Talk about your label as your identity, because then other people go, I struggle with that too. And then you start to be, okay, that's number one. And then you point fingers. That's where this term stigma becomes an issue. This is how those of us with depression want everyone else to speak to us and understand us. Well, why does that work on social media? Because now you're upset with mom and dad that they don't talk to you the way that you think you should be talked to when you're struggling. So you put that on your wall, or you put that in your stories. And it's a knock against mom and dad or cousin or aunt and uncle who talk to you in a way that you wouldn't like to be talked. But the problem is, telling people to stop something doesn't bring us closer together. Telling people how we're similar brings us closer together. So I agree, social media, we should absolutely talk about it, but we should talk about it through the lens of commonality of our challenges, as opposed to, this is what those of us have, and everyone else needs to find out how they should speak to us better. And you better make sure you stop stigmatizing us, right? That just pulls us further apart. Sorry if I'm going deeper into question one. And we're
Well, it's really educational. I'm learning a lot.
Yeah, me too.
Me too. Like, the conversation is getting really insightful, so that's amazing. So moving on to our second question, what are the factors that impact your own mental health and well-being, and the strategies you use to help manage your wellness? Well, for me, sometimes it could be probably tight schedules, or meeting up with the school project deadlines, but I don't take them like as factors that impact my mental health. I take them like as factors for stress, because it motivates me and energizes me and enhances my performance and productivity. Moreover, like I think it helps to build my resilience and improves my focus, and I'm able to do the task at hand at a faster rate. And this way, like I think I have always been able to build a sense of accomplishment, and it gives me a positive, feeling that I've been able to accomplish these tasks with the use stress. And but if there have been strategies that I need to like relax myself or manage my wellness, it has always been regular exercise, like waking up 5 a.m. in the morning, doing meditation and working out. And it has been maintaining a healthy diet that is rich in fruits, vegetables, that support both my physical and mental health. I'd say adequate sleep, about 6 hours during the weekdays and 7 to 8 hours during the weekends. That has ensured my body and mind are well rested. Besides that, like one of my favorite thing to do is pursue my hobbies like writing poetry, playing basketball, reading, and listening to podcasts. So if I share an example here, so as soon as I go to school, I run off to the basketball court and I'm playing till the first period ends, since that has been assigned for the children who are in the sports teams. So that helps to energize me, and I'm able to give good focus for the rest of the day. And to wrap it up, I practice gratitude, and focus on the positive aspects of life so that I can maintain a hopeful outlook and keeping the future goals in mind. So that helps to a person and has helped me to keep on continuing on the path that I've been.
Yeah, I definitely commend that, Namya, because waking up early in the morning and you seem very mindful of gratitude and of your mental health in general. So that's very admirable. For myself, I think most of my mental health, or I guess my mental stress that I get, I wouldn't say mental health, but the stress that I get would be from not necessarily from school, but from work-life balance. So I do find that I structure my school work pretty well, and my assessments and tests, my studying for that, I have a good structured schedule, kind of, which keeps me going at a steady pace. However, coming home and walking the dog and unexpected things come up, my mom's unable to come home from work and I have to make lunch or something like that, and I have work later today. That kind of balance can throw off, the structure a little bit, which can kind of mess with your mental stress. However, I think for the most part, I handle it pretty well, whether it's just deliberating over it myself. I'm more of like a solutions person. So rather than talking about my feelings, I'd rather focus on making a structure or trying to fix the problem. However, if it's a bigger issue that's really affecting me, I will talk to somebody for sure. Like my mom, she's been a therapist for 25 years. So she can sense if something's wrong with me in the first 10 seconds of seeing her. And she'll ask me if I'm willing to talk about it or if it's something that I think I can handle myself. But in terms of, depending on how big the issue is, I'll definitely discuss it with her and she'll help me sort it out.
I'm kind of shifting from what both of you guys said. I think the most kind of factor that plays in my mental stress, I would say, is relationships. If I'm having a disagreement with a family member or friends or other people, it weighs heavily on my mind and emotions, and the tension and strain from conflicts affects my overall well-being and it causes stress and sort of anxiety. To help manage my wellness, I communicate with people I care about. And I know we all hear communication is key, and I listened to that and I was like, hey, what does that really mean? And I've come to realize that communication isn't simply about telling someone your perspective, but actually actively listening and understanding their perspective. And this has helped me greatly when it comes to maintaining relationships and resolving conflicts.
Well, as for me, I don't exactly have any specific triggers, but I think academic pressure is basically what um, what affects me. Like I'm not scared of exams, nor am I scared of tests, but I hate homework and I hate writing notes. Like often at my school, I'm giving 10 subjects, 5 pages each of notes to complete within one day. And although I don't realize it myself, my body starts giving me signals that I'm stressed. Like my sometimes I get headaches, sometimes my eye starts twitching, sometimes I get a slight migraine. And the only thing that's really worked out for me is, I think, getting some physical activity. I don't mean going to the gym or something like that. It could be something as simple as just going out for a walk, getting outside of your home environment, because while your home environment is your most comfortable environment, it's also where you do all your work, and it's also like my desk. I hate sitting at my desk when I'm free. So getting away from that stress is, I think, the identifying what triggers your stress is the main key, and just going out is what works out for me. And yeah, that's it.
Well, first off, Namia, you and I are gonna have to play one-on-one in basketball since you told me you're a basketball player. So that'll improve both of our mental health as competition. Kabir, on your side, you and I got to stay in touch, buddy, because your brain, your description of how you think through issues is a beautiful thing. And I love that you have your mom to have an outlet right now when it's a higher level of things. Take it from a chronic overthinker, you eventually get yourself into trouble.
Thank you.
I want you to think about this analogy. Imagine your brain is a balloon and it's filling with air over time. Blue air, positive experiences, red air, negative experiences you're trying to figure out. When you're young, your balloon has a lot of space for you to be able to move that red air to the back as you try to figure things out and focus on the things that you enjoy, like the structure that you have with work and all those things. As that red air continues to build, your balloon is a finite space. There's only a certain amount of room in that balloon. And so I like to think of it this way because I got myself into that issue as I got older, into my 20s and then my 30s, was I always could figure out a way to fix it. I could always figure out a way to fix it. And then eventually, say this term slowly, you cannot outthink your mental health, right? Sounds like such a simple phrase, but think about that for a second. When you're feeling off and you try to fix how you feel off, you feel worse, okay? There's solutions out there like you going to your mom and how your mom can help you with those solutions. We'll talk about some of them. But when we get in our head and we go, I've been able to fix everything else in my life. When I had this test, I studied for this. This is what I did. When I had this game coming up, I prepared more than the person I was competing against. But with my mental health, wait a second, something's not going right. And the reason for that is we have two responses in our nervous system. One that's called our parasympathetic and one that's called our sympathetic. Think of your sympathetic as your stress response. Well, if your stress response is high and you continue to try to think how you're going to fix it, what happens? The stress response goes up even higher when you need this to go up more. And the only way this goes up more is through active practices. So a lot of you talked about some of the simple ones like the meditations and the yogas. There's practices out there. We call them STAR, stress and trauma, active release and rewiring, or a gym for the brain. And there are things like havening, tapping, okay? There's certain stretches that can be done. There's certain breath work that can be done in pattern breathing. And the reason for that is the equivalent of draining that red air out of that balloon and not trying to think our way out of it is to say structures in my body have changed over time because I've been thinking in these states all the time. What if, I got to fix this, I got to fix this, I got to fix this. That's the thing, Kabir, that eventually catches up to us. But if we have exercises that allow us to come down off of that sympathetic response state and to start to heal those structures, we don't get into that place where like a dog chasing our tail. Then the last thing I'll just share, we're getting light on time here, is Samantha, you talked about communication and that sometimes it's cliche. I'll throw out resources out there, and Mike might laugh that I'm saying this, but so we create a free app for any student to use. It's called Same Here Scale. So Same Here is one word, scale. And you can actually track and communicate with your friends in chats on a linear scale through emoji faces, not generic emoji faces, specifically faces that actually show the states of the nervous system changing and the thoughts, feelings, and behaviors that come in underneath each one of those states. Reason being we created that is if I said, Samantha, how are you doing today? You'd have no way to explain to me how you're doing in mental health. I'm okay, I'm all right, I'm fine, I'm okay. There's no reason why we shouldn't have common language in mental health. So our scale goes thriving, gliding, surviving, fluctuating, struggling, sinking. And you understand your movement on that scale so that now as that becomes common language with you and your friend Kabir checks in with you, Samantha, how you been doing? And you go, I've been struggling lately. Kabir knows what that means. Kabir, how you been doing? I've been fluctuating lately. He knows what that means. We have to establish that common language because if we don't, every answer goes, I'm Namia, and I was just asked that question, and I don't know if I'm comfortable and ready to open up and share yet because that's a lot of information to share. I'm just using you as an example, Namia. It overwhelms us when we get asked that question. It's so overwhelming. So I hope those resources and having that common language is at least a piece towards us being able to open up with one another. I think Mike said if we could do question 3 now, Mia.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much. Moving on to our third question. Can you recall a time you helped someone who was struggling with mental health? What did the situation look like and how were you able to help? Well, I'll keep it short and sweet. Last year, my mom went through a low phase as she had started gaining some weight, which was like the low phase and her like being a little bit sad at particular point of times was unusual for like her normal positive self. So I observed that change in her behavior, so I encouraged her to join me like for walks during the evening, and I slowly started talking to her, and she started to feel better. So I gave her compliment like, you're looking good, you've lost some more weight, and then I appreciated her efforts, and that helped to lift her spirits. So and then she was back again to exercising, and then because she's having less time to do that, but then she got back to her normal routine. So I think everybody needs that appreciation, and by educating, supporting, and advocating, I believe we can build a more compassionate society. So I believe like sometimes if you can appreciate someone, that just one good compliment can help the person come back on track and feel good of themselves.
That was nice of you to do, Namia. I have an experience actually from grade 9. So I had a friend that was struggling with several mental illnesses. Like she was labeled with things like depression, BPD, anxiety, PTSD, and more things like that because of past relationships she'd had. And in school, she struggled to make friends because sometimes she would have sort of like outbursts and lash out at people. And when I became friends with her, she expressed to me that she was struggling, and I understood this. So I would always give her time after she would lash out. And after being friends with her for like some time, I realized that being there and actively listening to her talk about her issues helped her. Like I could see it. When we were friends, I saw her communication with others improved because she realized talking to others was more beneficial than keeping her emotions concealed. Even though I don't talk to her anymore, it kind of makes me a little bit happy knowing I had a little bit of an influence on her.
It's amazing.
Yeah, I have kind of a similar story as well in terms of the listening aspect. So a buddy of mine recently went through a breakup a couple of months back, and he's a very good friend of mine. And I know, the state of his mental health. And he's generally, a very stable person, very structured, good guy. And when he was dealing with this breakup, he was the one who ended it, and it didn't have as much of an effect on him as he kind of expected it would. But I think the main thing was he was kind of holding it in because he felt, I don't really have anything to talk about. I'm content with my decision. But I still encouraged him to talk to me about it. And after talking for a little while, he did end up sharing some things and how he felt about it. And even though, he was content with his decision, it's still important to share these facts with somebody else so that you can kind of move on even in a more healthy way. And I think the biggest thing that I could do for him was just listen to how he was feeling. But not only that, I would also kind of display my own opinion in times where he needed that kind of validation. Like sometimes you beat yourself up over your decision, or you'll overthink a decision. And I'm not going to just stand there and let you do that. If I agree with your decision and I think you made the right decision for your mental health, I'll tell him, I agree with you. You made the right decision. You did something that was good for both of you in this case, which can also help, them come to a conclusion with their decisions.
Well, I don't really have anything to contribute to this question because I have had no experience. But since we touched the topic of social media, I guess I'll speak a bit about social media. Well, I think social media poses a huge problem because of the problem of comparison, where you're constantly being exposed to others' posts, and that creates a feeling of low self-esteem because you're comparing yourself to others, and others will obviously only mainly post about happy moments. And if you're not experiencing something like that, then you tend to have a low self-esteem. Then comes cyberbullying. Now, cyberbullying does not just mean the typical meaning. It could just also mean a negative interaction that you had with someone online, maybe just an argument. And then addiction. It's a huge problem now because when you're on a screen, you can't really monitor what you're doing. You can't even if you look at the time and you decide, oh, I leave in 2 minutes, it's really not practical. You can't leave it. Then screens and especially blue light has also been linked to creating sleep disturbances because it has an impact directly on your brain through your eyelids. Then the last thing is this concept called a fear of missing out. Although it's an overused term, I think it's actually a serious problem unless you're overusing it, because again, this feeling of comparison, because it constantly exposed to others' posts, this creates a feeling of FOMO and anxiety. And you feel like you're socially isolated. While social media does have its positive aspects, I think moderation, mindfulness, and cultivating a healthy online habit can help to mitigate some of the negative impacts of social media. But I think it should still be avoided unless absolutely necessary.
So, first off, Nami, a beautiful thing that you did for your family member, your mother. Samantha and Kabir, beautiful things that you did for your friends that were similar, right? So then I'm going to go to you, Han, and the same way I challenge Kabir, I'm going to challenge you in a collegial fun way. When you say I don't have experience in this, look at the question's not up there anymore, right? But the question was when you've helped someone who struggled with their mental health, right? And so your mind goes to, wait a second, I don't know anyone that's had, let's say, depression or anxiety. So, but up to this point in your life, like Samantha and Kabir shared, you've had friends who've struggled with things in life, right? Breakups that they've gone through, or what you just shared on social media, the way that they've felt left out and have the FOMO by seeing other people do things on social media. And so it's an interesting reaction, because when we see that term up on the screen, when it gets emailed to us before we have these sessions coming and we read, what's my answer? I want to prepare myself. What's my answer going to be for that session? We see mental health up there. Look at what our brain goes to. Okay, this specific way that I've looked at this topic before, who in my life has gone through that thing? But when you broaden it out, hey, if you have friends that have skated through life up until this point as a teenager that have had no challenges, I want to go come live where you live, right? That's not the reality of the world that we live in. And so when we look at mental health in a broader aspect of the challenges we face, then we can go, yeah, he was stumbling, she was stumbling along the way, and this is how I came in and this is how I helped them. And what I want to add on to the beautiful things that you all shared about the tips that you gave to other folks is, and I backed into this. I can't say that this is a strategy that I came up with. This was more I stumbled into it. I was working in sports, and then I had to find a way to get back on the radar screen to either work again or to tell people where I'd been for the 2.5 years that I had kind of fallen off the radar. I shared my story on social media, okay? And I shared it in a long written format. It takes 35 minutes to read on, of all places, LinkedIn, because the only social media channel that I had. I didn't have Twitter. I didn't have Instagram at the time. It was 2017. No one was talking about mental health back then. Kevin Love and DeMar DeRozan, all these athletes hadn't come out yet. And so I put my story out there. And there was a gentleman named Darren Ravel, who's on Twitter. He's got 2 million followers on Twitter. He's in the sports world. He said, Eric, I read your story. I got to share your story. Can I share it? So I wasn't thinking much of it, thinking, all right, yeah, go ahead, share. Well, either the greatest decision I made or the worst decision I made in my life, my telephone number was on the bottom of my share, because I thought I was just sharing it when I first shared it. I'm sharing it to my small network of people. Reach out to me if I can help you. But it ended up, even if it was a poor decision at the time because of the number of calls that I fielded, over 400 calls came in over the course of the next 2 months from as far as China. I live in the US. And what I realized in terms of helping other people is one of the greatest ways we can help other people is when we share our vulnerabilities. It creates a safe space for them to be able to share. So I just wanted to add that to the toolkit that you all are talking about, that it's beautiful and amazing that when you see others struggle, you're opening up a space for them. But sometimes that space doesn't feel open for them to share unless you're willing to be open yourself. And that may look really weird at the beginning. You got a friend who's silent. You could tell something's up. Like you were saying, Kabir, that your mom can tell when something's up with you, okay? But that's your mom. She lives around you. Okay. With your other friend, it's a little bit awkward. They're a little bit more quiet than they were before. Sometimes you got to sit with that friend and go, the last couple of weeks have been really difficult for me. The relationship I'm having, there's been fights going on back and forth. At home, we've been having some fights. My brother beats the crap out of me all the time in a older brother type of way, not in an actual type of way. And it's been weighing on me. And they may not share anything that first day. But as you continue to be open with them, that gives them the permission. They call it opening the door for them to be able to step into to then eventually share. So I hope that's helpful in terms of adding another piece to it. Is we can look for who's out there and who's struggling and say to them, I'm here to listen, I'm here to listen. But sometimes they feel like that's a spotlight that you're shining at them. Go, tell me now. If you start with your own story, they might step into that space for you.
I think that's a great point, because that's actually happened to me pretty recently too. Like, I didn't even realize until you just said it, but it actually happened to me in the sense that a friend of mine was asking me for some advice and some help on a subject. And I was the one who ended up talking a little bit about my own issues and, opening up. And it actually felt pretty good to do so.
Right? We have these mirror neurons in our brain that get turned on. When we hear someone say something and we relate to it, we go, yeah, okay. I got something to share about that also. So awesome. Thank you for sharing that experience.
I also can relate because my mother herself is a psychologist. So she was telling me about this thing that's a part of therapy called self-disclosure and modeling, which is basically like narrating an incident from your own life to whoever you're counseling. While you're supposed to follow a bunch of rules, like you're not supposed to go too much into detail and too much about your life, because it's ultimately about them, the one you're counseling. So yeah, that's I found what you said resonating with my knowledge.
Thank you for sharing. It's awesome to hear that there's so much. Like I'm assuming that's why a lot of you are interested in this space, because you've got parents who are interested in this space too. And you all are the leaders. I know it sounds very cliche. You're the leaders of the future, but you need to be able to take the torch and start these conversations internally amongst your friends groups and normalize not doing. Samantha, I love what you wrote to me on the, it was kind of what I was joking about before. How are you doing? Good. How you doing? Fine. Right. If we allow that to be the default, and I don't mean allow in that like, oh, you're a bad person for answering that way. No one's a bad person for giving a good or fine. It's just they're so exhausted and overwhelmed and have so many things on their mind, they don't know how to even begin the conversation. So you guys are really the leaders who are helping to start those conversations. And the tools that we talked about, the technologies, the ways that you discuss them online, the ways that you open up with your own story and share for them to come in, these are the ways that those conversations happen in an authentic way.
Absolutely, totally agree with all the ideas that have been shared today. And of course, like you rightly said, that we are the future leaders and the change makers who have to spread those ripples of change. And we need to be the torch bearers as well, who are going to ignite and, begin these conversations, which are really vital. And that's and I think one of my favorite conversations of all the time at the Tweet and Talks at the Global Student Chat. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. Special thanks to our guest expert today, Mr. Eric. And thank you to the guest student panelists. And also thank you to the student team, Namya, Samantha, Rebecca, Kabir, and Johan. If you want to be talking about social media ambassador program. So are you a digital leader or want to become one? Global Student Chat is always seeking student social media ambassadors. This information can be found on globaledsschat.com. And we are always looking for students who excel or are looking to grow their digital leadership skills. Please keep the conversation going by answering our Flow Chat for the rest of the month. Be sure to use the hashtag Global Student Chat so our team can interact with you. Please follow us and connect with us on social media. Website is globaledsschat.com, X formerly Twitter, @Global Student Chat, Instagram @Global Student Chat, and all of our live chats are available on our YouTube channel. Thanks again for joining us, and we hope to see you next year in October 2024. Thank you.